Up, what's up, my wizards? It's Dev, SBMTG, we like magic. And today we're gonna pick up where we left off yesterday with these Dominaria leagues. Yesterday we did all the white cards. If you haven't seen that yet, I'm gonna put a link in the description for you so you can check that out. But today we're gonna do the blue cards, go through all 19 of these that we have so far, and just like yesterday and for the rest of the week. We're going to do this in a more sort of stripped down format. Sorry, I know I'm a good looking guy. You can't see my face. I had a couple of people complain about that in the comments last time, but this is in the interest of speed so I can go through these as fast as possible and get the videos edited as quickly as possible. We're just going to do this a little bit more casually. Bring your flip-flops and your tank tops. Everybody's welcome. And, again, we'll just try and get through these relatively quickly so you know where I stand on these. And blue, it's especially valuable to be in a sort of more stripped down format because I have got a lot to say about these. These are really, some of these are very weird. True to form for blue, it's always got some really interesting and off the wall stuff, and Dominaria is no different. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's kick things off with Karn's Temporal Sundering. KTS is 6 mana. It's 4 and 2 blue for a legendary sorcery. One of these. You can only cast a legendary sorcery if you have a legendary creature or a planeswalker out. Target player takes an extra turn after this one. It's one of these. Return up to one target non-land permanent to its owner's hand and then exile KTS. Well, this seems to be the going rate nowadays for taking an extra turn. It's been 6 mana for a while, Part the Waterveil, and even Walk the Aeons a while back. It's been a while since we've even had a 5 mana take an extra turn card. But as far as the 6 mana ones go, I think this is one of the better ones that we've ever seen, if not the best. I really like that we get a Disperse stapled on here. That'll go a long way towards making your attack step more relevant, both on the turn that you play Temporal Sundering and the extra turn that you're taking. Not only can you remove creatures with this, but also you can remove like artifacts that are keeping you from attacking profitably, and Snaring Bridge comes to mind, although I don't think anybody's paying 6 mana for this in formats where Ensnaring Bridge matters, but still, it's an example. So, I think there's definitely a lot of cool stuff you could do with this. Getting to affect the board at the same time that you take an extra turn is really good and not something that we see a whole lot of. Part the Waterveil we were able to affect the board with the Awaken, and Part the Waterveil saw some play, not all the play, but some play. And I think this may end up seeing play too, but taking extra turn cards are there's a fine line between playable and casual with these, so you never know, but you got to keep your eye on it. But up next is Tempest Djinn. Tempest Djinn, just like all these, they cost 3 mana of their color cards. It looks solid, but not like amazing. But Tempest Djinn is 3 mana, all three of it blue. It's a 0/4 Djinn with flying, but it gets +1/+0 for each basic island that you control. This is pretty cool, obviously. If you cast it off of 3 islands, you have a 3/4 flyer for 3, which is obviously a fantastic rate, and it only gets better from there. You could have a 5 or 6 power flyer before too long. And even if you only cast this with, 2 islands and a non-basic that produces blue, you're still getting a 3 mana 2/4 flyer that has the potential to grow bigger as the game goes on. So I actually think this looks like a really good rate, but there are problems in standard, just sort of as far as the meta goes. Rekindling Phoenix will always either block or attack into this, kill it, and the Phoenix will come back, but Djinn won't. There's also Aethersphere Harvester, which this will just run up against. Glorybringer, which can just straight up kill this. And the more I think about it, Lyra Dawnbringer is probably going to be a really important card. And you got to be able to do something about that card in the air. And Tempest Djinn doesn't really do anything about any of the, or against any of the important flying creatures in the format. It just doesn't stack up well when it comes to what's going on in the air right now. So I think that's going to hinder it. But this does look like a really solid budget card for just a mono blue, even aggro deck, or a mono blue mid-range deck, which is actually kind of coming together. But I'm looking forward to playing this card. This looks very solid, but I do wonder about it. I worry about it from a meta perspective. But up next is Merfolk Trickster, and this is actually maybe one of my favorite cards in the entire set. Not even maybe, this is definitely one of my favorite cards. This is 2 mana, both of it blue, 2 blue mana for a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard with Flash. Yay. And when it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls, and it loses all abilities until end of turn. Well, people are rightfully freaking out about this. This looks much more than solid. And don't get too hung up on the Merfolk tag there, Just because it's Merfolk doesn't mean we should only think it goes into Merfolk. And as a matter of fact, that's one of my biggest problems with the card, is that Merfolk, A, doesn't want to hold up 2 mana, very often during the opponent's turn, and B is often going to have a hard time with double blue before turn 4. But maybe turn 4 is the turn you're going to be looking to play this most of the time, and that's also the turns that you'll be starting to hold up mana in Merfolk anyway. So, maybe a 2 or 3 of in Merfolk, but I could definitely see this seeing modern play and obviously standard play outside of Merfolk too. It's a bear, a 2 mana 2/2 with flash and a really relevant enter the battlefield trigger that does a lot of stuff. In standard, you can obviously, or any format, you can keep this, you can keep a creature from attacking. When your opponent declares attack step, they move to combat, just flash this in, tap a guy down. But also, with stuff like Hazoret, for instance, you'd let that attack, you'd let them move to combat, declare attackers, tap their Hazoret, and attack with it. And then you flash in the Trickster, and the tap clause doesn't matter at this point. Hazoret's already tapped down. But you can target it. It doesn't matter that it's already tapped, just so you know. But at that point, Hazoret would lose all abilities, including Indestructible, and you can initiate a double block against Hazoret. So this could kill, Hazoret for good, and Rekindling Phoenix too, for that matter, and make Rekindling Phoenix lose flying, and all the other text on it, so you wouldn't get the little token dude when it dies. That brings it back. So there's some cool stuff. Scarab God even. If you can get a double or triple block on Scarab God, it won't come back because it doesn't have that ability when it dies. So I think that Trickster is actually really cool, has a ton of just standard applications, but even modern applications too. It shuts down Tarmogoyfs, and that's really cool. You can flash it in against a Tarmogoyf, block the Tarmogoyf, and Trickster will live, Tarmogoyf dies because it's just a 0/1. So that's really sweet, and that is confirmed to work. People were saying it didn't at first, but it does. So Trickster has so many cool applications. I'd say it definitely has a shot in modern Merfolk and standard Merfolk, but there are applications outside of that too. Any deck that can produce double blue relatively early is probably going to want this if it's playing creatures. This looks ridiculous in tempo, and may even see some control in some control play, depending on what form of control deck we're looking at. I think that a creature-based control deck is looking more and more like a reality, and Trickster's part of that. I think this is going to see an awful lot of play in multiple formats. Again, one of my favorite cards in the entire set. So I think there's a lot to Merfolk Trickster. The thing looks crazy. But we got to move on eventually. So we're going to go to Antiquities War here. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a Saga. In case you didn't know how these work and you didn't see yesterday's video, I'm not going to explain them in every video, but I'll give them another once over here. Basically, these get lore counters on them. One when they enter the battlefield, and then another lore counter every turn thereafter after your draw step is how this is worded. When it gets its third lore counter, you get rid of it. So when it enters the battlefield, you'll put your first lore counter on it, and then look at the top 5 cards of your library. You reveal an artifact from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. You'll also do that on its second turn in play when it gets its second lore counter. And then when it gets its third lore counter, artifacts you control become artifact creatures with base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn. Now, at first, I kind of skipped over this card. When I read it, I was like, whatever. But actually, this doesn't look terrible. I'd say there are better sagas, stuff that looks better to me right up front, but this isn't terrible. You get card advantage off of it. You'll very likely get at least 2 artifacts off of it. And then the next turn, on turn 6, if you play it on curve, then you can basically get an army of 5/5s to swing in with. It only lasts a turn, but that's all you'll need. Hopefully, Settle the Wreckage can answer this pretty well once you do get that huge attack step. But still, if you play an artifact turn 1, 2, 3, and then play this on turn 4, get an artifact, play both artifacts on turn 5, the one that you search for on turn 4 and the one you search for on turn 5. And then on turn 6, you just have an army of 5/5s. So that could be sweet. You could build entire decks around this, and there probably will be a budget thing. And there's other amazing cards that work well with artifacts. Obviously, Kaladesh was a whole artifact block, and we've got Improvise in this format. There's Glintness Crane, too, Trophy Mage. There's a ton of stuff. Storm the Vault that could work with this. Treasures in general could work really well with this. I'm definitely thinking that there are options as far as Antiquities War, but maybe it's a little bit fragile, especially after boards. So we'll have to wait and see. But it definitely looks like a super interesting card. Up next is Blink of an Eye, and this is a functional reprint of Into the Royal, and that was a good card. So basically, it's 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an instant. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, but if you kick it, kicker is 1 and a blue. you draw a card. So Into the World was always a very good card in control decks. You know, you're affecting the board and drawing a card, replacing Blink of an Eye, that's very good. 4 mana is a pretty decent rate. I think this might take slots over Glimmer of Genius. There are decks in Standard that don't use the energy from Glimmer for anything. You know, they don't run Ether Hub even. So they don't really need it. That's just an effect it produces that it doesn't need, and it's always felt a little sloppy. And I think the Blink of an Eye might be able to replace Glimmer, and it almost certainly will if nothing else better comes along when Glimmer rotates in the fall. Remember, nothing rotates until fall here. So Blink of an Eye looks good. It could take Glimmer's slot, but if it doesn't, it will by the time October rolls around. So this Into the World is ridiculous. I don't see any reason to believe it's not good anymore. So, and obviously you can use this to save permanents of your own as well. That can be relevant, and also draw. And that's just a blowout because you're negating you're essentially counterspelling a removal spell and drawing, which is unbelievable. But we're going to move on to another one of my favorite cards in the whole set. I love this guy. This is a set full of legends. Again, Wizards has said that this is a set that will have a legend in every pack. And as far as the legends we've seen so far, this guy is like close to the top of my list. This is Tetsuko Umezawa, Fugitive. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary human rogue. And it has creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. That is unbelievable, and I am a huge fan of this thing. Just a quick search for stuff that this works with in Standard. Number one thing, as far as I'm concerned, the most exciting thing is Combat Celebrant. That just has 1 toughness, and yeah, getting that in unblocked seems pretty sweet, especially because it has a pretty big power. So there's that. Glintsleeve Siphoner is something that has 1 toughness and needs to get in. Another one is Bomat Courier. That's pretty sweet. You know, getting an exiled card every turn with Bomat, almost guaranteed, is awesome. Really, most 1-drops in the format qualify as well. Adanto Vanguard, Glory Browned Initiate, Hope of Girper is another good one. Daring Saboteur even, and Adorn Pouncer is another. There's just a ton of cards in Standard alone that this works really well with. I really like Adorn Pouncer, by the way, because you can always, have Tetsuko out, swing with your Adorn Pouncer, and then, pump it up with something. I don't know why I'm having a brain fart right now, but the thing that gives a creature +4/+0 and trample for 2, Invigorated Rampage, that's it. You can swing in with it, make sure that it goes unblocked, and then Invigorated Rampage or Adorn Pouncer, and then suddenly you just hit for 10, and there's nothing they can do about it. So I think there's a lot of really cool stuff you could do with Tetsuko. Commander notwithstanding, I imagine there's a bunch of cool EDH stuff with Tetsuko as your commander. But even just in Standard, I am really excited to brew around her, which I am to understand it's a feminine name. So I am super excited to do something with this chick. And it's a new Umezawa. Maybe we'll get a Jit in this set somewhere. I doubt it. But we do get an Umezawa descendant of some kind. And that's really cool flavor. It's cool to see that again. Speculation on going back to Kamikawa starts now, so there's that. But just the function of the card is incredible. I love this thing a lot. So look forward to that. And by the way, should also point out before I move on that it makes itself unblockable as well. So that's relevant. But up next is a less exciting card. This is Curator's Ward. Looks exciting at first, though. It's 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an enchantment. It's an aura. Enchant permanent. Enchanted permanent has hexproof. But when enchanted permanent leaves the battlefield, if it was historic, you draw 2 cards. Historic permanents are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. So this, it follows the rules of enchantments. Most auras are not great because you can get blown out on them. Yes, this does grant hexproof, but while it's resolving, they can still remove whatever permanent you're trying to play it on at instant speed, and then you just lost 2 cards. But if this does stick on something, it's probably worth the 3 mana. Protecting whatever artifact is part of your combo piece, or protecting whatever creature you're trying to protect in blue-white auras, for instance, is great. And if your opponent does manage to remove it, or if you want to sacrifice it for whatever reason, drawing 2 is also really, really relevant, obviously. It's a really interesting aura, but it does cost a good little bit of mana. 3 is no joke when it comes to auras, and you are still running the risk of getting blown out. So I'm tentative. I'm ambivalent about that one. So I'll move on to Precognition Field. This is a card I like more than I should. It's 4 mana, 3 and a blue for an enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an instant or sorcery card, and you can pay 3 to exile the top of your library. Well, it's not Sensei's Divining Top, obviously, and it shouldn't be. It's one of the more broken cards ever. 4 mana is so much to pay for something that really doesn't do anything when it comes into play, other than let you look at the top card. But that is something I like about it, is that you can look at the top card of your library and it doesn't, you don't like play with it revealed or anything. You know, your opponent doesn't know when a counterspell is coming up. So I think it's cool, but 4 mana is a lot. I will say though that I like this as a potential like one of in control decks, especially in the mirror match. I imagine that a control deck that gets this down against another control deck is probably going to win the game. So there's that. It's a good mana sink when you need one to get to a relevant card. But he needs so much. You know, you probably want to play this on turn 7 or 8 when you've got all the mana in the world. You've got counter spells to back it up. You can play even a draw spell on top of it if you want to. But it does translate to card advantage, and that is amazing. Although I will say Search for Azcanta is probably the better card, but I could still see people toying with a one-of field. Maybe even just in the sideboard, but in the main too. So I'm excited to see if this card goes anywhere. Again, I'm tentative about this one too. I don't think it will. 4 mana is a lot. It doesn't do anything when it enters the battlefield or the turn it comes into play. So you don't want to waste a turn off of it. And it's only really good late in the game for control decks. So again, I think there's a lot of strikes against it, but the card is very interesting and can lead to massive card advantage very late in the game, and control decks want that. So I think it's got some points in its favor too. But I'm going to move on to maybe the least interesting card in blue that we've seen, at least. This is Befuddle. It's 2 and a blue for an instant. Target creature gets -4/-0 till end of turn, and you draw a card. There was a card in the recent past, I think it was recent past, but it was exactly this, except it gave the creature -3/-0. So this is strictly better than that, but nobody cared about that card. Nobody remembers its name, so that will probably be Befuddle's bait too, a fate too. I don't really see this, even in limited, where, you know, instant speed draw a card isn't terrible. I feel like if you're playing Befuddle in your limited deck, you probably should have played something else, or you didn't have a very good pool. So we're going to move on to more interesting stuff, and this definitely is. This is Naban. I'm going to call it Naban. Dean of Iteration. NDI. It's 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 legendary human wizard. And if a wizard entering the battlefield under your control causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, where have I heard this before? That ability triggers an additional time. This is Man Harmonicon, is what I'm calling it. And it's actually kind of really sweet. As a matter of fact, you can follow this up on turn 3 with a Champion of Wits in Standard. And that's pretty dope. Draw 4, discard 2 is nice, and you get a body out of it. This is also good with Silvergill Adept for what it's worth. I mean, you need a deck full of wizards, but what is it? Merfolk Trickster. Worth pointing out, that's a Merfolk and a wizard as well. So there you go. But there's other edge cases here, like Resilient Kinra, Sunscourge Champion, Trophy Mage, all that stuff. But the card is fragile. You know, it's a 2/1, just a 1 toughness and all. But I think it's definitely worth looking at, you know, especially while we still have Panharmonicon and this in the format. We can probably do some truly nasty stuff. And I should probably also point out that in Modern, there's Snapcaster Mage. You gotta jam it with Snapcaster. That's the most obvious one. But there's also like Trinket Mage, which could be sort of relevant too. So I like a lot of things about this card, but this could be bulk too. But it's cool. It's cool. And you could probably make some sort of cool commander thing around this as well. So people are probably going to love it. I'm just waiting to see if it's truly relevant. I think the Champion of Wits play, though, might by itself make this card relevant. So be on the lookout for it. We'll have to wait and see. Up next is In Bolas's Clutches here. This is 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue for a legendary aura. Enchant permanent, you control enchanted permanent, and that permanent is legendary. Well, this is, by all accounts, a worse Confiscate. You know, you can't have more than one of it out, and you can't have more than one of the things you steal. So this is worse than Confiscate, which was never at the top of the crop. You know, they probably couldn't just straight up reprint Control Magic or Threaten, for God's sakes. Don't reprint Threaten, but, you know, I still don't think this is incredible. And, you know, when Confiscation Coup rotates out, maybe this will have a place, but I really doubt it. I really doubt it. So we're going to move on to more interesting stuff. And again, this is definitely more... I love this next card. This is Naru Mcha, Master Wizard. That's tough to say. 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for a 3/3 legendary human wizard with flash. Lots of flash dudes. When Naru Mcha Master Wizard Mcha enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy, and other wizards you control get +1/+1. I keep wanting to say Mcha. First of all, if anybody who remembers an early 90s action cartoon, Saturday mornings, called Mcha, and every time I read this card, I want to think of that show. It was like cowboys, but they were actual cows. So stupid. Most likely it's supposed to be a riff on Ninja Turtles, but it was so bad. And this card makes me think of it super hard. Naru Mcha, Mcha. But anyway, there's actual stuff to talk about here because this card is crazy. First of all, I've heard a couple of people say that this goes infinite with flicker effects, but I'm calling a judge on that one. Like if you have a momentary blink, the idea is that you play the momentary blink on one of your creatures, then you play the Naru Mcha while that spell's still on the stack. Then you copy the spell, you target Naru Mcha, and then you can just keep copying the flicker spell over and over and over. Which I think makes plenty of sense to me. And if you have something like an enchantment that deals damage every time a creature comes into play, then you can win the game that way. So that seems pretty solid, if you can pull that off. But there's other ways to use this outside of that. You know, obviously, this is great in control when you can copy removal spells. You know, just starting on turn 5, you can play a Fatal Push and copy it. Turn 6, you can play a Lightning Strike and copy it, and all that looks really good to me. But there's other cool stuff too that's outside of standard even. But in standard, this looks good with As Foretold, because you'll get free spells off of As Foretold. And you can just play, you'll have plenty of mana on those turns to play Naru Mcha. So that seems okay. And then in Modern, you could copy things like Ancestral Vision with this. You know, the turn that Ancestral Vision goes off, you can just play your Naru Mcha and copy it and draw 6. So that seems particularly dirty. There's a ton of stuff that I like about Naru Mcha. I think this will go the distance. I think this will at least see standard play. But up next is the Mirari Conjecture. That's a fun name. It's 5 mana, 4 and a blue for a saga. And when it enters the battlefield and gets its first lore counter, you'll return an instant card from your graveyard to your hand. The next turn, when it gets its second lore counter, you return a sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. And then on the last turn, the turn it gets its third one and you sack it, you get until end of turn. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it, choose new targets for the copy. This seems quite slow. Another potential one-of type card, but I think I like we were talking about Precognition Field a second ago. I think I like a card like it more, but it's at least worth noting this does give you card advantage in a couple of ways. You know, you get 2 cards out of your graveyard for the 1 card out of your hand. That's card advantage right there. And then when you copy those spells eventually, that's like card advantage as well. So I think this is actually, it has the chance of being awesome, but 5 mana is so much, and I can't think of too many spells that really, really want this. You know, even something like Storm doesn't want this. So I have a really hard time figuring out where it goes outside of an EDH deck. But maybe EDH players will freaking love it. So, you know, there's that. But up next is a spell that everyone loves so far, at least. This is Wizard's Retort, myself included. This is crazy. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue for an instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a wizard. Counter target spell. So if you have a wizard, then this is just a straight up counter spell. And there are a few 1 mana wizards. You know, there's Godfair's Faithful, if that counts. It's the 1-drop white wizard that gains you life whenever you cast a spell that's not white, basically. And then there's Siren Storm Tamer, which is very relevant because it's on color. And then there's Soulscar Mage, which is, you know, it's obviously a very, very relevant creature, but you don't want to play Soulscar and then hold up on turn 2 for a counter spell, you know. And it's also, outside of Spire Bluff Canal, going to be kind of tough to do that. So you got Siren Storm Tamer as an option at the very least. But, you know, even if you don't have a wizard out, this isn't entirely embarrassing to just cast Cancel in Standard. So I think this is definitely going to see some play. You know, we see a blue-red Wizards deck shaping up that actually looks like it might have some teeth moving forward here because it's got some really pushed cards. And this is definitely one of them. You know, I don't know if you play all 4 of this, but it's probably on the level with a card like Silumgar's Scorn, the dragon counterspell from a couple of sets back. I don't think that it's insane. I think it's definitely balanced, but I definitely think it's worth the hype and it's going to see some play before all is said and done. So, yeah, super happy to have a potential turn 2 counterspell. But again, even if you don't play it on turn 2, and it just, say, enables you to go like turn 4, 2-drop creature, hold up for this, that's still a great play too. So I definitely see a lot of potential for Wizards Retort. But up next, we're going to move on. This is Deep Freeze. It's this card isn't as exciting, but it's cool. I do like this card. It reminds me of Kingdom Hearts. Deep Freeze. But anyway, 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an enchantment, Aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has base power and toughness 0/4, has defender, loses all other abilities, and is a blue wall in addition to its other colors and types. Well, this is essentially a Lignify that costs 1 more mana and is in a different color, which I will actually take in standard. This translates to a very budget answer for a bunch of annoying stuff. You know, Hazaret, Scarab God, Ronus, Rekindling Phoenix. There's a lot of stuff that I just don't want to deal with. Again, it's essentially Lignify, which is not a bad card in its own right. It just costs an extra mana. But I think that might be worth it. I think it might be worth it in standard, especially if you're building a budget deck specifically. So I like it. I like it. And in limited, this is removal, so you'll play it. But in any case, up next is Time of Ice. This thing's cool. It's 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a Saga. When it enters the battlefield, gets its first lore counter, you tap a creature an opponent controls. It doesn't untap during its controller's untap step for as long as you control Time of Ice. The second time it gets a lore counter, you'll do that again. Just tap a creature, freeze it down. And then, when it gets its third lore counter, you sack it and return all tapped creatures to their owner's hands. Now, this could be potentially very nasty. I don't see any decks being built around it or anything, especially considering, I mean, it revolves around your opponent having to play creatures for it to be really good and, you know, built around it. But I do think it's at least cool. I mean, it's not a Blue Wrath. It's not even River's Rebuke, for that matter. But I do think it's cool. It's going to be really nasty in Limited. I mean, this is a pickup in Limited. This actually looks like one of those cards that's gonna not necessarily rule the draft format, but be a serious consideration in draft. So I'm calling it right now. I think Time of Ice is going to be crazy in Limited, but I don't think it's going to translate to standard or anything. I'll move on here to Sentinel of the Pearl Trident. This is 5 mana, 4 and a blue for a 3/3 Merfolk Soldier with Flash. Another blue Flash creature. And when SPT enters the battlefield, you can exile target historic permanent you control, an artifact, a legendary, or a saga. And if you do, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Now this actually kind of cool. It costs $1 million, you know, but it can save a permanent or it can reset a saga. We were just talking about resetting sagas. I like a lot about this, but at the end of the day, I gotta say I don't think it goes the distance. I think 5 mana is might as well be 1,000. So I don't think it's gonna happen, but I do think the card is cool. But up next, rounding the corner here, there's only a couple cards left. This is Academy Journeymage. Let me take a sip of this tea here, guys. I didn't realize it'd been this long. My voice is getting dry and annoying. You've probably noticed. So let me fix that. Hold on. And I'm back. Okay. So Academy Journeymage is our penultimate card here. It's 5 mana, 4 and a blue. Seems like there's a lot of 5 mana blue stuff, but it's a 3/2 human wizard, and it costs 1 less to cast if you control a wizard. Now, when it enters the battlefield, you return a creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So it's like Deadeye, Rig Hauler, and a million other creatures. I mean, there's a creature like this in like every set now. And this is no different. It potential to cost 4 mana to get a Mana War. You know, it bounces a thing, and it's a 3-power guy. Although Mana War was only 2 power, but it only cost 3. I would have liked if they had just reprinted Mana War, but this at least has a relevant creature type, so you got that going for you. But it won't make it anywhere out of Limited. This is a very good card in Limited, but outside of Limited, I don't think it does anything. So I can move on to Homard Explorer. This is the last card of the day. It's 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 3/3 Homard Scout. And when it ETBs, target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into the graveyard. So you mill 4. Somebody mills 4, at least, when it enters the battlefield. And I can't get too excited about it. I like Homards too. I started during Fallen Empires, so Homarids are close to my heart, but I just can't get too excited about it. But I do see an interesting deck in Standard, at least. Well, you know, maybe Dredge in Modern or something. No, don't get crazy. Don't get crazy. But I still think this won't really do much. But there is a cool budget deck sort of shaping up in Standard. You know, there's, what is it? The thing. Not going to remember the name of it right now, but it's like a 2 mana spell that puts like 5 cards, that mills your opponent 5 cards. So there's that. There's Homard Explorer, and there's obviously Fraying Sanity. So there's a budget mill deck that's kind of coming together here, and Homard Explorer might be a cool card to follow up Fraying Sanity with. You know, throw 8 cards into their graveyard, and have a 3/3 blocker out. That might be somewhat relevant, but this is really just a callback to people to be like, hey, I heard you like Homarids, so. You know, it exists for us to laugh and be like, "Aw, crab people." So, you know, Homarids are back. Here you go, guys. They're throwing us a Homarid bone. So, but that's all of the blue cards that we have so far, at least. I mean, remember, guys, there are, I think, just over 100 cards that we haven't seen from this set. So no matter how big this leak is, yeah, there's 100 and almost 130 cards. Jeez, 129 cards that we haven't seen in this set. So there's probably another 10 or so blue cards that we haven't looked at, and really 10 or so cards in every color that we haven't seen. So don't think that this is all that we're going to see. There's still plenty more of the set. Plus all the art and stuff, all the story elements, there's still plenty to be seen here. But so far, as far as what we can tell from blue, I think there's some really strong stuff in this color. I really like Wizard's Retort, the Wizard Counterspell. Obviously, that's cool. There's a couple of great legends. Naru Mcha, that's the thing that has flash and lets you copy spells and stuff. I think that looks very strong. Like very playably strong. I like Tetsuko, the legend that lets stuff with power or toughness less than 1 not get blocked. That makes it unblockable. That looks great. Blink of an Eye, although I don't know that Tetsuko is like super standard playable. I think it's a budget card, but that doesn't keep me from liking it. Blink of an Eye looks insane. That's the new Into the Royal. And finally, Merfolk Trickster. I think that definitely has a chance at seeing multi-format play. It's probably my favorite blue card we've seen so far. So we've got some really good stuff here. And by the way, I know I didn't do that for white, but I should probably do that for like every color moving forward. Just tell you what my favorite ones are. And I know I've been talking pretty fast here at the end, but that's because I'm trying to wrap things up. I know these videos are super long, but I can also tell you guys are enjoying them. So I hope that you like this one. If you did, make sure you hit like. Sub if you're new so you get all this content, all this evaluation, all this analysis. Probably going to want that. Hit the bell for the notifications. Follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev. And you can also support me on Patreon for $1 a month. Keep this operation going. Keep the lights on. At patreon.com/SBMTG. Link in the description. Also help out if you want to. I hope you do. By supporting my sponsor, TCG Player. You can also find a link for them. They've got super cheap Dominaria boxes already on pre-order. It's a very, very early pre-order, but it might be worth it. So go ahead and scoop up boxes as low as you can. Click the link in the description to go over to TCG Player. Do just that. But that is pretty much all. I think I'm tapped out for this one. Make sure you join us. I'm going to try to bang one of these out every day this week, so keep checking back with the channel. Or just turn the notifications on and subscribe. So do all that stuff, and I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from the Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.